Award winner. According to his nominator, Herb Carson, he played every sport with passion, helped his teammates better, and always exemplified the ideals of sportsmanship and fair play. A consummate student athlete, he earned his biology education degree in 1967, completed a master's degree in education at Geneseo in 1972, and earned his doctorate in biology education from Cornell University in 1978. A professor emeritus at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, he coached JV soccer at Phelps Central School in 1968 and has stayed active in athletics by racing bicycles for many years. Among others, he lists basketball coach Carl Witzel and then assistant baseball coach Ira Wilson as influencing his time at Geneseo, and his most memorable moment was hitting a Grand Slam home run against Canisius in 1965, with Coach Wilson retrieving the ball from beyond the right field fence and returning it to him. He grew up in nearby Retzoff and still lives in Madison during his retirement years. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce the 126th member of the Geneseo Sports Hall of Fame, Jim Stewart.
Well, thanks to George and all of the other members of the selection committee and all of these 1960 era basketball and baseball colleagues that were here, high school classmates, including Herb Carson, who nominated me, and Herb and I started taking the bus to kindergarten probably in 1950. And George then reminded me that his son was 3 years old when I was at Geneseo. Or he was 3 years old, not his son, when I was at Geneseo. So it makes me feel sort of an honor to be here. And to have a representative of my family, my dad's cousin, and my cousin first removed, I guess that's the genealogy, Dora Coates, who was a graduate of Geneseo prior to me. Because my dad would come to all of the ball games that his job at the mine in Retzoff would allow. Even those cold baseball games in the spring when nobody should be playing baseball in upstate New York. Although we didn't travel to Potsdam and Plattsburgh, where it was really terrible to play in the spring. But those were great years, and it's it's a real honor to join the others that are here, Mike, Dan, and colleagues that I had at Geneseo. And it's not only Dr. Hoey that had influences on us. I think every one of us who made our way through Geneseo can point to individuals who had significant influences on our lives. And for me, there are 4 out of many that stand out. And at that time, as I wandered around the campus today, the campus was so much smaller then. And in spite of the changes, I think there are some commonalities. And that is, even though the campus now, I find, gets all of these awards for being one of the top academic, state-supported universities in the country, there weren't those award systems at the time, but we had some outstanding faculty members. And for me, 4 stand out. 2 who would never believe that they had any influence on me, I'm sure. Gordon Miller in the art department, who taught art history classes, and I had no artistic talents at all. But the art history gave me a different perspective, particularly on modern American art and modern art in general, which has stayed with me ever since and has influenced me everywhere I go. Every city I visit, there are art museums, and I always think back to Gordon Miller's influence. And then there was Wendell Rhodes, who was an anthropology professor, who gave me this deep appreciation of the antiquity, the human antiquity of the Genesee Valley, as we were excavating sites along the river just south of here, and that were inhabited 3,000 years prior to the time that we were excavating them in 1967 and 66. And that sense of the history of the valley had a tremendous and lasting influence on me, although I doubt Wendell understood, even when we were playing foosball and other kinds of games in bars around the area, that he had a sense that those kind of influences would exist. And then Carl Witzel, basketball coach. Was one of the most amazing individuals that I experienced at Geneseo. He would bring his young son Dave to practices, and I think the sense that he was this very successful basketball coach, he really transformed, I think, basketball at Geneseo. Brought us, as someone was saying, Mike Nelson earlier was saying, brought us into the modern era. But Carl gave us the sense, or me the sense, of belonging to a team, even though I very irregularly started a game. But you could be a father, a coach, an academic all simultaneously. And that carried with me as I tried to perform those various roles throughout the rest of my life. And then finally, Bob Recker in the biology department. No one had such an influence. Bob was instrumental in me becoming a biologist, becoming a biology teacher, and eventually a faculty member who taught biology to prospective teachers. But I'll never forget Bob wasn't the most dynamic individual in the classroom. He was great in the classroom, but not so dynamic. But when he got into the field, things changed completely. In the first semester, or maybe it was the second semester here in introductory zoology course, we were on a field trip to Honeoye Lake because Bob knew that that was an area where eastern timber rattlesnakes could be found. And he took a group of us to the lake. We were climbing up the banks, and under a rock outcrop, good size, maybe 3.5 or 4 feet long, timber rattlesnake was going under. And before the rest of us could do anything, there's Bob. He dove at it, reached under the rock, grabbed it by the tail, pulled it out so we could all see it. And I said, you know, this life of a biologist is one that I could imagine. And Bob and I stayed close friends until his death some years ago. But it's those kinds of memories of Geneseo, of these faculty members and coaches. And very few of you, although some of you remember Ira Wilson, Coach Wilson. He wasn't coaching at that time, but he went to all the ball games. And he was sort of a legend in town, and way beyond his time in some ways. You would see him, I grew up in Retzoff, and you'd see Ira running across the flats on his daily runs. He was one of those early people who took physical fitness seriously once he was even a relatively older adult. And he was just a neat man to be around. And that baseball that was mentioned earlier was something that I keep in fond memories of Ira retrieving it for me. And I'll finish by saying that it was one of the only 2 home runs I hit. That one was a very legitimate one. Most of my batting average was a result of speed and luck. But we were playing at Buffalo, and I don't remember Buffalo State or the University of Buffalo one day. There was a building on fire right next to the ball field. And it was 4th or 5th inning, and I looped the ball just beyond the shortstop's head. And at that time, the wind shifted and brought this huge cloud of smoke across the baseball field that kept the shortstop and the outfielders from being able to find the ball. But the bases were obvious enough and had a general sense of where they were, so I was able to score this home run with the ball completely unfound by any of the outfielders. Then the game was called until the smoke blew away. But anyway, thanks so much for allowing me to be here this evening. My daughter and granddaughters and son-in-law, when they looked at the photo on the website and they saw that the 3 other inductees, Megan, Leslie, and Aaron, were in color and mine was in black and white, they were wondering if Matthew Brady was the photographer. I assured them